Yeah, hi, good morning. It's Kelvin Mackenzie, and with a couple of hours of pretty punchy stuff. So let's start off with the only story that really matters today, and it remains to be Anne Widdecombe. So the police start off by telling us two rather large whoppers. One is that they've nicked a 26-year-old who lives down the road, and that the chief constable says this was in the finest tradition of British policing, and gives himself a pat on the back. And actually, as almost as a throwaway line, there was no politics, no terrorism involved. So let's rewind on that. Number one, the 26-year-old had absolutely nothing to do with it. So that's not really a clanger. I mean, you know, it is a fast-moving investigation, and I do buy that. Number two becomes more difficult when the chief constable of Devon and Cornwall, an office you would have never heard about, and actually in some respects I'm not sure actually should exist anyway. It should be merged and stop all these kind of little countries existing without the expertise or the investigative powers which are often needed these days, especially in relation to tech, right? He says it was actually a cracking day for British policing. Well, that lasted about a nanosecond before the following happened, which was that they then decide, why an assistant chief constable decides this, I don't know, to say that there was no politics involved in this and there was no terrorism involved. Now, look, this is a lady who has been a minister of the Crown. She is somebody who had been loved despite her public image. Anybody who's prepared to make, and she knew this, make a fool of herself on Strictly, just have a go, I don't care what people think. And then suddenly it's a fantastic television moment as she tries to dance. It's not good. You know, this is a woman who is part of us, right? She's not like most politicians who stand on some kind of pedestal all their lives and then they write some crappy book explaining what geniuses they were. I tell you who falls into that category: Ed Miliband, who I find it impossible to believe that he's going to be the next chancellor. This is a hate-filled, I love taxing people who've made anything of their lives and handing it to a load of people who've made bugger all of their lives, but have sent you a bill for the last 10, 15 years of their life. I dislike that idea intensely. And I also hate, by the way, Cameron for the way that he decided to turn this into actually a policy idea, which has now lasted, the triple lock has now lasted, what, for way over 10 years, and is a bill which we can no longer afford, and yet no party wants to get rid of it because, not unreasonably, everybody will be shouting out, I won't vote for you. Actually, we just got to take the pain. At some stage, either we take the pain and control it, or actually the IMF, the Institute of Miserable, come in and they take control of it. So let's go back to it. So Anne Widdecombe is murdered, and they say there's no politics involved, there's no terrorism involved. Hold on one second, it's off again. And actually, this is to announce that Mike Graham has turned up.
It must be Tuesday.
Yeah. Morning, Mike.
Morning.
Do you know how long this?
It's a lot shorter than you think. I mean, I could talk through it basically until it finishes. You know, I think that'd be the best way to go.
Okay.
Just,
fine. So all I was saying was that this is not a low moment for the cops in Devon and Cornwall.
It is.
They managed to grab, failure in the face of a triumph. What worries me about the police is that scrutiny is not helpful to them, is it?
No.
At any level now, scrutiny is not helpful. So the question really, and I love the cops, right? I love seeing them. I love seeing them walking around because I feel safer when I see them. But when there's scrutiny over some big issue, something seems to have gone. I'm just not focusing on the Widdicombe situation, but almost everything goes completely wrong.
Well,
Why is this?
Well, look at what happened just the other day. Graham Linehan, one of the many people they've paid money to,
They did
25,000 quid, right,
Yeah,
of
right.
my money and your money,
Yeah.
because they screwed up. And you think, well, why did you screw up? What were you thinking? You know, at what point is there going to be some kind of proper managerial overlook where you say that's not what we do? You know, we stop people.
Okay, right. So here's
crime.
the pub. By the way, I'll totally right. The Linehan thing. We're nicking him when he comes off an airport,
Right.
an airline, right? Because they're used to nicking people, and that works fine as long as there's no spotlight or scrutiny.
Right. Or you don't nick the wrong people.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Or under the wrong circumstances, under this. But there's definitely a breakdown, and this to me affects the cops at the bottom of the rung. Because they're the public face. I never see a chief superintendent. And one of the issues, it was once said to me by a senior officer at the yard. He said, one of the problems, he said, about the police force is that most people don't live next door to officers. And therefore, they don't know them because they themselves are a closed unit.
Yeah.
Because to say at a party, I'm chief inspector or something is actually to have the red arrow effect. You know, everyone goes, whoa, right? Because they may have something in their background or their relatives or whatever the reason is. So they stick to their own. I don't blame them for that.
Not many people have friends who are police officers, do they?
That is true.
Right? I mean, I don't.
Well, I tell you what, I'd be quite interested if anybody on who's watching this is able to say, yeah, I play tennis with one, or I play football with another, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, I don't know whether I was with your brother actually a couple of weeks ago, and I had the misfortune of watching the police in action because there'd been some kind of robbery.
Yeah.
I don't know if he told you.
Yeah.
And we watched. There must have been a dozen of them, right? Only 2 of them were actually doing anything. The rest were all just standing around this van, and it was obvious what had happened. There'd been some kind of attempted robbery or a robbery of a jewellery store where some guy had apparently just walked in, started smashing the place up, lifted stuff out of the glass boxes and walked out. And the forensics turned up. And as I said to your brother, it's not exactly NCIS this, is it? This woman got out, sort of waddled her way round, a few boxes out, you know. I was going, where's Mulder and Scully when you need them? You know,
this sounds like a Channel 4.
Yeah,
Channel 5.
It was
Channel 5 or Channel 6.
But just watching them all, it was just like, what are they doing? And why? They were there for a good 2.5 hours. And
all of them.
Yeah.
But also you and Craig were there for 2.5 hours.
True.
Did this?
Yeah. Well, we had to keep an eye on them, you see.
Was drink taken?
There was.
Could it have been
we were
that actually
sipping.
they were being quite efficient and you guys were so pissed you couldn't actually
not
tell?
at all. As you know, Kelvin, in his case, not so much, but I can do 2.5 hours, no problem at all.
Do you know what?
I had serious training.
I was at a party with my brother on Saturday, right? We took him and his longtime partner to the party. On the way back, we only stayed there for an hour and a quarter.
Yeah.
On the way back, he sat in the back seat. And what had happened in that hour and a half, he was now talking Latin. And I thought that was the first. I'd never seen anybody go downhill quite as quickly in my life.
I know. He's always been a bit like that.
So we go back to the Widdicombe thing. So the Chief Constable says we've done a great job.
And a very quick job.
Yes, and this is in the finest tradition of British policing. I want the police to succeed. I don't want to be having this conversation.
Yeah.
And the next minute we have what is a disastrous, honestly, and they tried to make it look good, didn't they? First of all, they said that there wasn't any terrorism or politics involved.
Why did they say that?
Why did they say that? Not least of all, when they went to Rotherham, the officers that were there were South Yorkshire Police and counter-terrorism. So they must have had an idea.
Exactly.
Either what he had said or some kind of clue. So why are they saying all this? And then out comes the statement, and then there's the politics of it all, and then instead of them looking like geniuses, which they might be entitled to be, I don't know, they look like idiots. And not only that, how do the officers on the beat look, right? You know, because if you're an ordinary guy living in Devon or something, you'll see an officer on the beat and say, Oh, that wasn't very good, was
Yeah,
it? Like that.
exactly.
What, the officer is going to agree with you. He is the public face.
Well, it looks as though Shabana Mahmood actually ordered them to hand over control of the case. It doesn't look as if they decided to do it themselves. It looks as if she ordered it. That's what it looks like to
Oh,
me.
is that right?
Yeah, because the Home Secretary was the one that announced that it was now going to be run by not by Southwest Terror,
Yeah.
but by Southeast Terror. So it's London Terror Police who are now in charge of the investigation.
But do you know, then they talk about it being a terrorist issue. Well, that's very interesting. But they were saying that it was communism.
Yeah.
Now, look, I view parts of communism in a funny way as terrorism of the people.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Does this mean they're going to arrest Zach Polanski?
yes, it means really of the far left, doesn't it? So I was surprised about that. Look, we've got coming on to join this conversation. Would you like to stay, Mike?
Well, I've got to go and do a podcast, actually.
Oh, have you? What,
Yeah.
literally?
Well, I mean, I can do 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so you stay on because it has two effects. The audience stays, which is my main reason, not because I like you, right? In fact, in many ways, I've always disliked you.
In many ways, it's an entirely mutual feeling.
But
you also fired me once, by the way.
Oh, good, good. Well, I wasn't successful enough. You've got to kill people. You can't allow them to get up and be successful. Right, joining me right now is Keith Tordoff, who has an MBE. He's a detective a former detective from West Yorkshire Police. Morning, Keith.
Good morning, Kelvin, and good morning, Mike.
Morning.
Okay, good to speak to you. Tell me, because I do not know chief superintendents, assistant chief constables, and the like, how do these decisions actually get made? Who says that we should say that there was no terrorist or political link? Who actually decides that?
Well, that's a very good question. Obviously, my police service is historical, but I would say the big problem with policing, and has been for some considerable time, is the influence of politics. There should be no politics in policing, but with recent events of appointing police crime commissioners, police fire crime commissioners in forces around the country, quite often a political party gets that role. I actually stood in 2021 in the area where I live, North Yorkshire, as the police fire crime candidate independently to try and break that cycle, but obviously very, very difficult. I didn't succeed. But there's clearly political influence, and the senior police officers, it shows the press conference they gave straight after the discovery of, unfortunately, the body of Anne Widdecombe was very much a political statement, and that isn't what we want from police. We want good old-fashioned policing. Experienced senior detectives, experienced senior officers who understand about cases, and clearly it should have been from the outset. We're keeping an open mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, why don't they just say we did? Yeah, we keep it open. No, we actually don't know, right? We actually don't know where we are right now, and I think the public would understand that and said, even if we did know, we're not saying anything right now. But I totally buy the police crime commissioner coming in, because that then leads to a conversation, does it not, between the crime commissioner and the chief constable. And in the end, the chief constable can get pushed out and has done on repeated occasions by the crime commissioner.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, the police crime commissioner can hire and fire the chief constable. The chief constable constantly must be looking over the shoulder, and the chief constable should be allowed to get on with the job. Of course, they would say they are, but they aren't in real terms. And there's political pressure or angles to what they come up with. I mean, the whole statement from the beginning by the senior officers was almost like murder without motive.
I've got the more intelligent and hard-working member of this of UKLIVE here right now, Mike.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, two things really. The police officers, the senior police officers, looked terrified in that press conference. They looked as if they were so frightened of saying the wrong thing that they were kind of trying to pussyfoot around. And then secondly, I thought it was interesting that the crime commissioner down there, who's a woman called Hernandez, I think, she actually came out and said, in direct opposition to what the police had said, Of course, people are going to speculate about this kind of event, you know, but please try not to do it on social media, which seems to me to be a much more reasonable thing to say, rather than say, don't speculate, you know, period.
Yeah, no, I can understand, especially in the area, that everybody talking over the garden fence, down the pub, at the cricket match, are going to say, what do you make of all this? Right? So to be told, so that's why I agree with that KC, who's Hall is number one man, a hugely intelligent guy, always actually on the side, I think, of the public, saying everybody's going to talk about it. We just have to accept that the way you talk about things today is online, right? And so saying don't do things is a certain way of encouraging people to do it. So what would be your learnings from this? If you were the Chief Constable of North Yorkshire, for instance, what would you say when something came up like this for a second time? What would your instructions be to your officers?
Well, the first thing is that clearly it's been a terrible, brutal crime. Clearly it's a high-profile figure, which is very relevant. And we must be open-minded. We're not going to rush to any conclusions. As we've seen in inquiries, quite often people are arrested in the initial stages who end up being nothing to do with the actual offence. And obviously that can have a big problem for them in the life. So people need to be told to be restrained in terms of what they do speculate about. Allow people to talk in the pub and come up with their own conclusions and their own timings and various things. But the bottom line is leadership starts at the top, and the message should have been a strong leadership message. But these chief constables and senior officers quite often don't have the experience. There's been, in recent years, clearly rushed recruitment, very, very poor training, lack of experience, experienced officers leaving the force who can pass on that experience about dealing on major incidents. I actually historically worked on the Peter Sutcliffe serial killer murder, which was obviously known as the Yorkshire Ripper murders, and there were so many mistakes made by senior officers at the time, highly criticised in an era when we didn't have the mobile phones, the cameras, etc. But they were supposed to learn from that, and then we started media training for senior officers, something that I actually went through. But unfortunately, it's this political element now. They're frightened of their own skin, of these people. And Mike summed it up. They look frightened giving a statement which is written out for them to read from because they've no experience about what they're talking about. They've most probably never worked on a major incident or a murder. And that's the significant thing. They lack the experience. And politicians...
But Keith, I don't understand. When you say that the senior officers are all quitting for other things, right? What, I mean, literally, if they come in at 18 or 21, they can have a pretty good pension by the time they're 50, for instance, right? What does a former chief constable do apart from sit at home all day and count his pension money? I mean, is there plenty of work out there for these guys?
Kelvin, the senior officers in recent years, quite often they've been recruited, some of them in later life, from business and industry, which is good. Right. You know, that we need that kind of experience, but they haven't all come through that 18, 19-year-old working the way on the beat, getting, you know, into sort of fracas, fights at clubs, pubs, etc., investigating burglaries. They haven't done the actual training as such. So some have come in later. Obviously, they created the rapid promotion through the degree system. If you've got degree, you could be rapidly promoted through the rank, giving them a bit of experience, a few months in this department, a few months in that department, and saying then they've been, you know, detectives, they've worked on this, and quite often they hadn't. Now, some of them are very capable people academically and on paper, and maybe, you know, verbally, but in terms of the practical ability, no. And it shows, and I think Devon and Cornwall, unfortunately, were in special measures under HMI inspectorate system of government.
Is that true? Is that true?
Up until last year, I believe they were in special measures and they were released from it. Now, there's a case for saying that maybe they weren't good enough to be actually allowed out of special measures.
Perhaps they should go back into them.
Well,
go on.
I was going to suggest is just to bring it in. I was talking to Colin Sutton, who's Reform's possible new crime commissioner in Norfolk. He's running for election, going to be elected on Thursday, I think. He was talking about a time, and you'll remember this, Kelvin, back in the day in Fleet Street, where the relationship between the media and the police was a very different one.
It was good,
which was really good as well. And you'll probably remember this as well, where basically, Keith, you would be getting a phone call from the senior detective on the case. He would talk you through whatever it was that was going on. he would trust you. He would say, look, don't say this, don't say that, but know this, know that. Here's the background. This is what we're looking at. And it was all much more clear cut. Now, obviously, you know, Leveson put a stop to that.
No, that's an offence. It is an offence.
Now it can't be done.
You would get disciplined and probably kicked out of the
Yeah.
force
Yeah.
if you did
But the
that.
system worked. And I mean, you know, you might say that there were downsides to it as well. It was all a bit cozy. It was all, things got maybe covered up if the press were in cahoots with them. But it was a much better system for keeping the cops honest and keeping the narrative straight. Whereas now, I think the police, because they don't talk to the media really at all, it's a hostile situation. And so quite often the journalists will jump to the wrong conclusion or they'll report the wrong thing. You know what I mean?
Mike, if somebody, there used to be a relationship between the working senior detectives and the press. Quite often, actually, it ended up down at the pub having a talk about what was going on. And we aren't saying that it was perfect, but actually, at least they were experienced officers. The press knew the boundaries of what they should and shouldn't report because they didn't want to lose that contact. And it actually did work. Now, police officers are being led by people with, as I've said previously, lack of experience. The police officers on the ground quite often aren't that good at talking to people. One of the things when I stood for Police Fire Crime Commission as an independent candidate was that I wanted to get back to police officers being able to talk to the public because I think they've lost the ability to talk. And it's shown it in that press conference. From day one, it's been politicised. You know, clearly they said it's a white male. Well, you know, leave your options open because, as we've found, the first person arrested didn't turn out to be the person. And
do you know what? Do you know what? It's a good point you make there, Keith, because one of the things that I warned to that white male. I said, fantastic. Okay, every time there is a major issue, a murder, a rape, a grooming, all right, let's see how that comes out the other way up. Say a brown male, a black male, not of British nationality, from Ghana or from the Saudis or somewhere like that. Let's just see if that does happen. And if it does happen, then see what price the chief constable pays for saying that, i.e. the left all piling in, you racist so-and-so and all the rest of it. I thought this was I'm in favour of it. I'm in favour of it as long as it turns out to be 100% policy and not I wouldn't bother if I were you. It's going to cause a problem.
I think the big thing we almost not forget is, at the end of the day, this is a lady who has been murdered, brutally murdered, and we've got to concentrate on that. And all the speculating, you know, doesn't really help the people connected and friends, family of her. And the police should hopefully look at what they've done here. It's clearly a mess. It's come across as a mess. The public lose confidence, as Mike earlier said, in the police officer on the ground. I think Kelvin did, because, it was Kelvin, that you actually then, the police officer on the ground, people think, they'll be saying to them, oh, what a mess that is. And it's reflection. The whole professionalism has gone out of policing, and we need to get back to no politics in policing, police without fear or favour, equality in law. All these factors, they're the main things. And unfortunately, they're totally lost at the moment. And that's on the ground in general. So people will start to get confidence when we get strong leadership, which we lack.
Okay, Keith, thank you very much. Mike, thank you very much for sparing your time, especially flogging yourself to death and now flogging yourself to death on a podcast. This is the Mike Graham world, right? Totally dominating everything that he touches. And actually, the audience seem to like it, despite my efforts. Keith, thank you very much for your time. We will be back to you. I totally buy your major point there, was that, you know, Anne Widdecombe dies in the most horrific circumstances, something that you could never, ever have envisaged if you'd been her or anybody, her neighbours, her friends, or politics. And at the end of the day, it gets lost because of a piece of, I think, wrong-headedness by, I didn't realise the chief constable or his force were in trouble. And that does explain where his remarks saying that they've done a great job had come from. But once again, thank you very much indeed for that, Keith Dordoff, MBE, I might say. Congratulations on that, by the way, Keith. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Right. So I still feel extremely upset about the Widdecombe thing, the Widdecombe murder. It is I don't know if it happened to your mum or it happened to a relative or anything. I find it impossible to believe that she should reach the end of her life in this manner. You know, there was a quote in the Times, I mentioned it yesterday, in which they said they saw her in the morning, and in the morning she was walking very, very slowly and was a very, very frail old lady. And within a couple of hours, she was murdered. You never know in life what's round the corner in this rather violent world. So R.I.P. And I hope that this guy, whoever it is, faces a long period of time in jail. And it brings up the argument, do we really want these people to continue to be given 3 meals a day and in a warm environment? Or would we rather have a different form of ending for them? So from Anne, I'm moving on to a debate which has really come up over 2 items that I noticed this morning. One of them is that Lisa Nandy, how these people get work is beyond me. Anyway, she's she's the DCMS Secretary of State. She has just said in the Times this morning that they have discounted the idea that the BBC take ads, and they've discounted changing a different form of subscription. And what they're going to do now is they're going to impose a tax on people who take streamers. So I take Prime. You probably take Prime, but possibly for Amazon reasons. Netflix, and I take Disney. And actually, for some obscure reason, I've now taken ITVX, although like everybody else, I don't watch it. They're going to put a tax on that so that the money is coming. So they are saying, hold on a second, there's a child screaming in the background there, guys. What on earth is going on? Is that all right, that child? Anyway, what they're saying is, you like streamers, right? So which is you're prepared to pay for. So we're going to put a tax on something to subsidize something that you're not prepared to pay for. That is socialism for you. Have you ever heard anything like that in your life? You like Netflix? You like it? We're going to put an extra tax on there so that you pay for the BBC, which you clearly don't like. They lost like 500,000 subscribers in the last year. And astonishing. This is what happens when you end up with a socialist government, constantly trying to work out ways to subsidize the runt of the litter. And this is a commercial issue. Anyway, the other thing that occurred was that, so if you have an electric car, they're going to, as from 28, I think they're going to charge you by the mile. And unbelievably, they're going to do this while you're traveling across Europe. That surely can't be right. So you go on holiday and you're still going to be paying back to the exchequer. In my case, I've got a hybrid, which I never use the electric. So I will be paying both by the mile for the hybrid, which I don't use, and paying the petrol tax. That can't be right either. Now, somebody whose entire life is made up of trying to work out how to create freedoms for our country, for individuals who feel increasingly kind of narrowed in by life, is Alan Miller. You're described here, Alan, as co-founder of the Together Association. It's a grand-sounding idea, protecting freedoms, rights and democracy. Is that right?
Well, that's what we do, Kelvin. Yes, good morning.
So in what way do you do that?
Well, we launched actually during lockdowns,
right.
And we got hundreds of thousands of people to sign petitions and write in.
This is
in
effectively Britain. This was about COVID, was it?
At the time, well, what it was about was the suspension and the suppression of democracy, parliamentary scrutiny, proper evaluation of things, and implementing unprecedented measures without proper discourse. Really, we thought that there needs to be proper consultation with the public and people being engaged. It was also about a mandate that care workers would already lost 45,000 of them. We had 100,000 frontline NHS staff saying that they had worked a year and they did not want to have a procedure. So we organised a petition, a campaign. We were launched out of lockdown. At the end of the lockdown period, when we did a number of campaigns, we've got hundreds of thousands of supporters, we thought, well, maybe things will just go back to normal. What we immediately discovered were there were all sorts of measures linking to this story, for instance, around things like emergency traffic orders, where during lockdowns, all sorts of bollards and cameras and checkpoint Charlies were being put up in our streets and without any discussion or consultation to create low traffic neighbourhoods around spurious claims around clean air, actually limiting and confining transport and mobility in Britain. We haven't had to pay taxes to move to different places for a long time in Britain. And the idea that suddenly this is just being implemented without any proper consultation, and often people were ignored when it happened. And then a range of other measures around free speech, around questions on privacy and autonomy. We have a big campaign challenging the imposition of digital ID. It was never in any manifesto by Labour, and then it's suddenly sort of foisted upon everyone. 8 million directors are being forced to do one login without any discussion.
Yeah, I know the amount of the control factors that have emerged over the last 2 or 3 years have been off the dial. There was virtually nothing you can do by just saying, I'm going to do it. There is somebody else telling you, you've got to have this number, you've got this address, oh, by the way, somebody needs to sign that, and all the rest of it.
And perhaps even worse than that, you're not allowed to ask the question or challenge it. So 12,000 people arrested every year for the last few years for non-crime, Orwellian-sounding, non-crime hate incidents. The wrong type of views. Perhaps people like yourself and me, Kelvin, having this kind of conversation that you'd expect in North Korea or somewhere like that, but not in Britain, where from the Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment, we've had the foundation of free speech and liberty. And so what we do it together is try and encourage everyone around the country, locally, regionally, nationally, to lobby councillors and MPs, but not just to think the elected people are the ones to do it, that the British public should have a voice and get our muscles democratically flexed and make sure we're heard.
Have you had... So we had on the other day, by the way, that child has been screaming now.
I've just been told.
And what has happened?
There's a Brazilian embassy there. And so it's people waiting outside. I've told them to move, so they're on their way.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, why don't they bugger off back to Brazil?
Diplomatic incident already.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The Brazilian embassy. So, yeah, I mean, this is a good point there. But when things like those, now you've got the one login for the government, right? Who decided that was a good idea? What, somebody just decided to? But the Tories are as bad as Labour, aren't they? I mean, there is no difference. They all want control.
Absolutely. We've got weak authoritarians, Kelvin, now. So we've got a situation where the people in power don't want to use the laws that currently exist when people break the law, but instead they want to bring a raft of new measures in consistently. There's no application and dealing with things because that takes judgment, execution, efficiency. So instead we get a plethora of ever more suffocating laws and rules. We got a situation where one login's a really good and bad example. It's like 8 million directors being forced onto it. We've got a campaign that says currently you can use an accountant not to have to do that. But the whole infrastructure is compromised. There's already been whistleblowers showing that there's data breaches and they can be affected. So even if people aren't concerned, even your viewers are not concerned with the idea of, it might sound a bit conspiratorial, big brother, social credit system, I don't buy that.
Yeah.
The very problem of data breaches, which only you just have to Google data breach, hundreds of millions of them already in 2026. We've seen the economy crashed around things like Jaguar Land Rover. We've seen Heathrow. We've seen our service personnel compromised in Afghanistan. On and on it goes.
Can I ask you about Heathrow for 1 second, by the way? I don't live far from there. Yeah. I've always been puzzled about that. I often wonder whether the Russians have simply done it, but they said no. The electricity area just blew up. Is that?
Well, each of them are terrifying ideas, right? Whatever the reality is, I don't know, right? I mean, but the problem is there's a myriad of risks and threats. There's bad operators. There's rogue states. There's people who are not rogue states who just want to terrify and terrorize us. And then you've got the incumbent idiots who can't deal with things, right? So the fact that the big tech companies can't protect their data and we have constant data breaches should lend us some concern and caution that we think this government can do it, or any other government as it happens. I mean, we got a situation where you only have to think back about the post office scandal and Horizon and what happened to people and how they were smeared and how long it took to become clear. So we're saying there needs to be a freeze on one login. We can't have things implemented. There should be in a manifesto. We're encouraging everyone to say that we must have a digital bill of rights which allows people the option not to have to digitally verify to participate in society. We've got driving licenses, we've got passports, national insurance numbers. We can submit through analog. 3.5 million older people can't do it anyway, but that's not the point. The point is we shouldn't have to. As Churchill said, right? We don't want ID cards. That's not a British thing to do. And you know, millions of people have said that already.
So you're saying, let's get this right. By the way, I would sign up for this, but you're saying, look, we've got passports, we've got driving licenses, we've got insurance numbers, right? We don't need anything else.
Absolutely. And you see, they use these arguments, they try and like sweeten a different demographic. They say, oh, it's to stop the boats. Obviously, everyone ridiculed that. Germany, Spain and France have biometric digital ID cards. They have not stopped illegal migration. It's about will and conviction. Then they say it's all just a bit more convenient. Now they're saying it's to protect the kids. We're going to have a social media ban. But what does that mean, Kelvin? It means that you and I and every other British adult are going to have to digitally verify to prove that we're over 16. So de facto, we have a digital ID verification system that they outsource, like they did with the Online Safety Act, to big tech censors. And they say, well, we're not censoring, it's up to them, but they'll fine them up the wazoo. But they're giving them 3 months. And increasingly, you can see across the board, this is the thing. It's about creating a surveillance situation where
in fact, I got caught in it the other day. I presume that was part of it, to prove through having a credit card was enough to prove that I was over 16. So I just had to click on it in order to keep Apple happy or somebody happy, right? I don't know whether any of this is true. I don't know whether I'm being scammed or not. I'm concerned. And actually, it's become a confusing area about whether actually you're being deceived so that somebody can make some money, or you're doing something which the government / the tech operator insists that you do.
Absolutely. I mean, and you got all these scammers. My mum doesn't pick up the phone most of the time. They get these road calls. She will never do anything online now.
So has she still got a landline then?
She's got a landline, but anyone that she doesn't know the actual number for, because you get these road calls.
Yeah,
like,
correct.
Charming.
I think she's right.
Yeah, but it's a terrible situation to be in. But also, whilst tech companies are doing things, they aren't going to necessarily imprison you, take money out of your bank account, do a whole range of things. Debanking. So this is another example of what we've seen, debanking in Britain. And the social media ban, Andy Burnham has said that his team has said they're going to now restrict VPNs and ban some of them. So we're going to be in alignment with China and Russia and North Korea and the states like that, right, where you're not allowed VPNs to all sorts of businesses.
So I didn't know that. Burnham has said no VPNs, has he?
They said they're going to restrict VPNs heavily in line with the idea of a social media ban.
So they're going to stop VPNs for the under 16s. Is that it? But I presume the under 16s haven't got VPNs, have they?
Well, so you got a situation in Australia. They're modelling it on Australia, and only it's been an abject failure. They keep trumpeting it, saying how good it is. And people have used VPNs.
So are they saying that
people have used VPNs there, and they're worried about
the under 16?
There's over 60% of young people are still on there. What happens is, it's well-intentioned. Some people who are pushing for this, right? I've got to say it's well-intentioned, right? So they're not my enemies. They don't want children to be harmed. And I get it.
Yeah.
But we're adults and we have a duty of responsibility to children.
Yeah.
In the same way, you can take away a smartphone. It's not mandatory having a smartphone. You can monitor it. You can put all sorts of controls that already exist on there. You can say you're not having a smartphone, you're having a brick phone.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, we all went to school without smartphones,
Yeah.
and some of the education is not that great and they're all on smart tabs. There's a conversation that needs to be had about how we address it, but it's also an assault on parental responsibility and autonomy, which we've seen for 2 decades, right? The state...
Yeah, you see, the point where I agree with you about that. The other thing is that if you're under 16, right, you're not allowed to use your phone, and all you'll see, and I would be more than guilty, is spending my entire time, literally, I would say 8 hours a day, I'm on this.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless you're going to take that out of the equation, where are the kids going to get most of their learnings from? They're going to copy their parents. I find it difficult to believe that that link can be broken.
And also, in all of this, we don't want to catastrophize technology and the internet. There is so much to be learned. There's so much knowledge. It is the town square now. It's the public square.
It is.
There's lots of examples.
As the Anne Widdecombe issue has exposed.
Yeah. And many others, right? Where we've been told one thing and then it becomes apparent it's not quite the same. And this is the concern that people that are running things, they don't like. Look, we've got a really terrible situation, right? That the idea that saying something is often worse than doing something.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And we must have a robust culture, like in terms of free speech. And because if we don't have that, we don't actually have freedom.
So where do you stand on Lucy Connolly then?
Well, when you say where do I stand on it,
Yeah.
I mean, I think what she said was not pleasant at all and abhorrent. But
it wasn't 31 months.
31 months with people that have been
Do you know what?
let off on remand.
You could beat somebody. You could be a 20-year-old thug who beat an old deer half to death and not get 31 months.
Well, we've seen this sort of convictions and non-convictions and people getting off for all sorts of things that's out there. And when people have got concerns about two-tier judiciary and policing, you know, we've got a serious situation. Policing without fear or favour is paramount to a society that polices by consent. We've got training colleges that are imbued with DEI and ESG and the idea that you treat people based on their protected characteristics. That has to go. Frontline officers find it really difficult. They're paralysed by it, right? I've got a lot of sympathy for them, but we've got this terrible situation where the senior officers are imbued with this, bit like our civil service. And it's become apparent to the British public that people are treated differently. We had a riot in Edgware Road last week. Silence. We didn't hear Keir Starmer talking about it, or Sadiq Khan, or Andy Burnham. They've all said many things.
What is that? The Moroccan riot?
Well, yeah, when there was a loss to France. Now, a police officer was put into hospital.
Yeah,
and
disgrace that.
That's a very different reaction, a response to what was going on in Southampton or anything else. A chap got 3.5 years for throwing a cone. Police officers. Now, I'm not condoning throwing. I don't think violence is ever the way to do things. But we need to have policing without fear or favour and consistency, not a two-tier approach. Very dangerous when the public start feeling like that. And the way to resolve it is to deal with it and to get rid of these mad policies. And the way you have to do all of that is you have to have a debate and you have to be open and honest. And the constant attempt to suffocate and shut down free speech in a range of areas is problematic. In the same way that people would say, another way of doing it, call people far right or conspiracists. So it was a conspiracy that they'd be paid by mile, pay per mile, and electronic tagging. You said that 2 years ago. They go, boo, 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 boo. You're all wackos, right? You're saying you're all mad, you know, the social credit system, you're obsessed. Well, now look what's happening. We've got a situation precisely with that. They're saying telemetrics in the car will be a way it can go directly to the government database. Woo, isn't that good? And across the board with discussions around central bank digital currency, getting rid of cash, we campaign to keep cash open with the Bank of England, the FCA, and banks, actual banks where you could go in and do things, part of our community. Because the constant attempt to survey and track and be obsessed with is reflective of an elite that's given up on the idea that they can actually do things, right? Build things, infrastructure, like defense, protect our freedoms. Instead, what they want to do is shut us all up, tax us a bit more, and we've got to get that turned around. That's why I'm excited about some of the things they call populism now. I think there is a change.
What do you call populism, though?
Well, I mean, I think that it's populism generally often means the public who are interested in democracy and sovereignty and key issues around those things. And I'm not necessarily with what has been the globalist institutional last 3 decades. If we think about the kind of Blair Cameron moment, it's linked to the EU and big international global institutions and ever separation from the public, from the demos. Democracy, I've just come back from Greece, right? Democracy, demos kratia, people power, the idea that the public is important. We saw it through the Brexit debates. You're all gammons, you're all scum, you know.
That's the reality. The reality is that which is spoken by the left or the right often has nothing whatsoever to do with the way people are thinking. Actually, so Brexit was a great thing.
Brilliant.
It was a great thing because it indicated there is plenty going on out there.
Yeah.
And the rise of reform indicates, above all else, that there was a group, there was a policy and a group of people who were merged into one. And it turned out to be 25% of the nation. And that's why I feel uncomfortable, why I feel upset about where Farage finds himself, because were the whole thing to implode, where on earth are 25% of us to go? We can't go back to the Tories, right? I'm a half Tory, half reformer, and I'm not going to Labour. We're just going to be wandering around in the desert.
Well, I see. I like the biblical reference, but I think that we, the people, are very capable and we have agency. And I tend to not put too much truck on just one or a few individuals, although some people are history making, and Nigel Farage has definitely been that.
He is that.
It's been seismic changes in Britain, but it's the public, the people that have always made history. It's the great British public every day that keeps Britain running. Our farmers, our drivers, our carers, our workers, our business people.
I know. I totally
so
get
when
that,
I say
but
that,
we
when I-
need to have.
Yeah, I agree.
We need to have a Messiah of some
Well-
kind, a mini Messiah. I don't care. It has to be somebody that actually has an effect, manages to put into effect those things which you happen to be thinking.
What we're saying it together is that we can all give a lead in our areas around the country, locally, regionally, nationally. We've demonstrated that. We've got 500,000 flyers that we've already distributed around the pledge and no digital ID. We're all sending them to Andy Burnham now, saying that people are not going to download government ID onto apps.
Alan, I promise you, he won't take the slightest bit of
He
notice.
may or he may not, but we saw that Keir Starmer, this was an albatross around him and he had to do a U-turn on it. And we're going to keep the pressure. We got a U-turn on farmers. We set up a new farmers organisation and we got the government to U-turn on that. We got the Department of Transport to do a U-turn on livable streets and low traffic neighbourhoods, although this new government came in and pushed it forward. As I say, we've had wins on banking, on cash, on a range of issues. We've lost some things.
Well done, you, man.
But this is an ongoing challenge. We love people to get involved with togetherdeclarations.org. And I also think it's critically important that people do come out and vote. We've got 50% of people who don't vote. Many people who've been around us, we've said, go and give a lead. Many of those new people have got involved in these new political organisations, local councillors and MPs. I think that's fantastic. The more everyone can stand up and be counted, because the one guarantee we've got is that if we leave it to others or those in power, we're going to see more of the same. So we're encouraging everyone to inject a
When
kind
you
of...
say more of the same, are you saying, for instance, we might as well focus it down to the world that most of us live in, which is a world led by politicians, okay? Are you saying that reform is not the way forward, or that the Tories aren't going to do it, or Labour are a problem? Are they all a problem to you?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I think we need to have some good faith, because, you know, there are people around us, for instance, that think that no one can ever be trusted. I think that's a problem, the collapse in trust in one another. And I think that on a daily basis, we see neighbours and people around Britain, you can rely on one another and people are in good faith. There's some rotten apples, as my nan would say, but generally people are decent and good. I think we've had a culture in politics that a few things have happened. One, we've got a civil service that stops many of the elected representatives doing things which got a whole agenda. Two, they've often, because of the legacy of the EU, said, well, it's not our responsibility, they make the laws there, they haven't been accountable. Three, there's all sorts of not wanting to deal with the public openly and discuss and be accountable. So those things have happened, spin, all the stuff we've seen. I absolutely believe we can turn this around and it can get done. And I think that, you know, reform actually represents the embodiment of much of the populist moment at the moment, right? And it's a seismic shift in Britain, right? It's really transformative. But I also know that Boris Johnson said that he would eat his ID card if he was ever given one, right? He likes to quote Pericles and Cicero, very smart guy, choff choff. But then when it came down to it, he said, well, it's Freedom Day now, the day after we formed because of this, but you're going to need vaccine passports. So my point is, in opposition, people can say things, we're very supportive of people, but it's also the case that it's up to us, the public, to keep everyone accountable and to keep this debate. We're going to keep campaigning and pushing for it to make sure it's fresh and that it's at the front of everyone's mind, because what happens is people can get in and they got all these pressures and things happen and then one thing becomes another thing. And this is the moment. where many things can happen. Look, I think we're seeing it in the States. Things did change 2.0, but 1.0, Donald Trump, he got quite suffocated and he saw what that all meant. And so we've got a number of challenges. And even if a really strong populist party like Reform gets in, there's going to be many more challenges. That's not going to be that.
So what you're saying is, no matter what happens, there'll always be a role for Together. Alan, I've got to thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Kelvin.
He's a good advocate for his beliefs, and much of what he says is true. I've been caught up in that government login nonsense, and then we've got quarterly reporting and God knows what else going on at the same time. You can't turn around without filling in a very, very long form. So support Alan on Together. What was your email address again?
Well, you can get us at togetherdeclaration.org or at togetherdec on X.
There we are, guys. In the same way as you all got behind the Free Speech Union when Toby Young came on, Alan sounds as what I quite like about Alan is he sits outside my rather naive approach to the world, which is I'm more politically based, and he's saying it's about individuals getting together and getting things done. So thank you very much for that. After the news, we'll be back with actually a big issue that's just come up because that treacherous Lorne Barnwell has just got the boom from Kemi throwing out the wets. I'm so old, I remember Francis Pym being fired as Foreign Secretary in '83. yeah, that old. You're right. Time to go home. And we're going to talk about what effect that's going to have on the Conservative Party.
Hello everyone, Edward the News Hughes here with your Tuesday Bulletin. Andy Burnham is on track to become the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Greater Manchester Mayor has secured overwhelming support from Labour MPs, positioning him to replace Keir Starmer without a full contest or general election. He's expected to enter Downing Street around July 20th. In a major development, counter-terrorism police have taken over the murder investigation into former Minister Anne Widdecombe. She was found dead at her Devon home with serious injuries last week. A man was arrested and later rearrested on terrorism-related suspicions after new evidence emerged. The probe is now treated as potentially politically motivated. Other headlines include UK moves to sanction Russian cyber networks and designate Iran's IRGC, alongside concerns over heatwave impacts. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Yeah, hi there. Right, now it's a good moment for this piece because I don't know whether you've been following it. There's a rather strange character who was Chief of Staff for Theresa May, enough said, right, called Barnwell, Lord Barnwell. And he's just had his whip taken away. Didn't say where it was taken away from, but had the Tory whip taken away in the Lords for basically moving against the policies which Kemi Badenoch had bring in, including chucking out anybody who wanted to be a Tory candidate or possibly a Tory MP if they were in favour of net zero. Actually, this idea of throwing the wets out, fantastic idea, because it cleans it all up. Round my way, there was a hopeless piece of work called Ben Spencer, who is MP for Elmbridge and Runnymede, right? I wouldn't give him house room, actually. And he only got the job because the previous incumbent got slung out in some kind of Boris organised putsch. So he's got the job. Honestly, he's too wet. He's too wet for the Tories. Actually, he couldn't join the Lib Dem because the Lib Dem had gone far left, okay? And I'm not sure where these people end up. And so the Tories now are in quite an interesting moment. I think every time they throw a wet out, increases their chance of being elected in 3 years' time. Because that's what Thatcher did. Thatcher was emboldened by a big win in '83, and so she threw out Francis Pym as Foreign Secretary. Pym was as wet, dripping wet. So I'd sling them all out. And I think then we know. So for instance, Cameron, I would have slung him out. Osborne, who, by the way, thought that Reeves, now this is what an idiot Rod Osborne is, an ocean-going idiot. He thought that Rachel Reeves would be a good Chancellor. And he was only saying that because he was going into basically M&A advisory. And he thought he could get hold of it would be helpful to get so that when he had deals which had to go through the government machine, that this would all get nodded through. Shocking, shocking, right? Nobody said a word about it, but Cameron and Osborne were a shocker for the Conservative Party. Anyway, somebody to talk with who may know a little bit more about the ins and outs of the political world from the Conservative perspective is Andrew Allison, who is head of campaigns at Popcorn's Popular Conservatism. And so I'm going to ask him, Andrew, what does... Actually, I know what unpopular conservatism looks like. I'm still,
we all do.
I'm still recovering from 2 years ago, right? And actually, to be fair to Kemi, I don't care how much good PR she's getting. The needle is not moving. Have you any... First of all, what do you think of the Barnwell thing? And then we'll talk about how to make the needle move. What do you think?
Good morning, Kelvin. Yeah, I mean, I was delighted that Gavin Barwell was kicked out, and it was about time.
Yeah,
you are quite
good.
right when you say that the Lib Dems have moved very much to the left. So, is there a home in the Liberal Democrats for these people? Probably not.
Yeah.
But they are more sort of traditional Lib Dems, more traditional Blairite people, and the Conservative Party is pretty full of them. And she's certainly right to move against them. My only fear is that she's left it too late. When she first became leader of the Conservative Party, that's when she had the most power, didn't she? But now she's in here, and how long has she been Conservative leader for? About a year and 8 months thereabouts.
Yeah.
And she's left it a long time. And my fear as well, it's probably one of the reasons why I ended up leaving the Conservative Party late last year and joining Reform, is that I don't think that the Conservative Party is going to get anywhere near the reins of government for a very long time, no matter what she does. And I am a great admirer of her, but I just think that she's trying to push water uphill to try and get the Conservative Party credible again.
Okay, but it is a problem, isn't it? In the sense that that what I would have said were Conservatives back in the 80s and they began to lose shape into the 90s, right? In the 80s, it was quite clear that many of what I would describe as reformers were to the right of the Conservative Party. There was a left, okay? What I worry about today is, what is the Conservative Party? Who actually says, I'm a Conservative? And yet 21% in the polling are saying would potentially vote Conservative at an election. Those numbers don't seem to be represented whenever there is an election of any kind.
Yeah, I mean that's the difficult problem, isn't it? I mean, I know what a Conservative is, and I think I'm one of them. Sort of right-wing Thatcherism that was extremely popular in the 1980s. And even though I was only 12 at the time, Kelvin, I also remember when Francis Pym was booted out of office. But it did take Margaret Thatcher a long time to remove those wets. She needed to establish herself.
She did.
And it was after that 1983 general election that she really established herself.
She did. You're right.
I mean, that's when she shaped the government in her own image, really. And up until that point, it was extremely difficult for her. But there are plenty of people who I disagree with in the Conservative Party, but I think we agree on broadly on the same sort of principles of a smaller state, lower taxes, personal individual freedom and responsibilities. But there are too many in the Conservative Party who don't even agree with that. And it strikes me that no matter how large or small the parliamentary Conservative Party is, about a third of them are proper Conservatives. About a third of them are somewhere in the middle and don't really believe in very much. And about a third of them are people like Gavin Barwell, who are way off to the left. And really, for the Conservative Party to get back into office again, it does need the purge of these people who are really just using the Conservative Party as a flag of convenience, or perhaps to use another term that's popular today, they simply identify as Conservatives, but they're certainly not.
That's a good expression. So the next issue then, so here we are, we've got 3 years to go. I expect our economy actually to do rather better. I'm alone in this issue, but so it may be that I won't last very long. I expect our economy to do rather better over the next year, strangely enough, 18 months. You can't expend that amount of money as a government and not expect some increase in productivity, especially with AI coming in. So it may be bloody awful for employment, but it may be pretty good for commercial activity. So how do you see us? So the effect of that will be that Labour would look better. So Labour looks better. Reform looks as though it's in choppy waters, as you might expect in politics. Where do you see the Conservatives? Are they going to advance? Are they going to stay still? Do they actually represent anybody anymore? What do they have to do? What do they actually? If you had to say, I've got 3 things the Conservatives have got to do to be successful, what would they be?
Well, one of the first ones is what Kemi has now started to do, which is to purge the party of the Wets, those people who are not conservative. So she's making a start. It's just baby steps at the moment, but hopefully she will go on and do that. The second one is again what she's already stated. I mean, she said that net zero targets ought to be scrapped. She said that we should come out of the ECHR. So yes, policies like that are good policies, and she needs to keep on doing that. When it comes to the third point, well, I sort of rather struggle with this one, Kelvin, because I don't really think that she can do much more than she is doing already. I just think that the Conservative Party brand was pretty much trashed over the 2019 to 2024 period. I mean, you go back to 2019, and Boris Johnson came in on a wave of optimism in many ways. And of course, people didn't want Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister, which also helped. He was going to get Brexit done, etc. We all know that COVID, or the government's response to COVID, got in the way of that. But they then ditched Boris, and then they got Liz, and then Liz was there for 40 odd days, and then they got Rishi, who nobody really wanted. And they just went on pursuing the policies prior to 2019. And you've really got to ask yourself the question, between 2010 and 2024, under any metric that you use, the country moved more in a leftwards direction than in a conservative direction. And that was despite 14 years of either conservative majority or conservative-led governments. And that is the problem. People just don't trust the Conservative Party anymore, no matter how good, I repeat, how good Kemi is.
So okay, let's just cut to the quick on this then. Are you saying, it sounds as though you're saying the Conservatives are actually over, that they are finished? How do you equate finished with, lying second in the polls?
Well, not lying second in the poll. I mean,
well, they're
some
around
polls,
about
there's some
21% is the last ones I saw anyway.
Yeah. I suppose that's right. Yeah, I mean, there or thereabouts. That seems to move around a little bit, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay,
Kelvin?
all right, okay, but between 18 and 21, something like that.
There will always be a Conservative Party. I don't believe that the Conservative Party is finished as in completely dead, but I think there's a real risk that the Conservative Party could end up like the old Liberal Party in the early 1920s. It will still elect some MPs to Parliament. It could be a few dozen. It could be as much as 60 or 70. They could even get into some form of coalition, and this could happen after the next general election as well, Kelvin. There could be a coalition between the Conservatives and Reform. But I doubt in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, certainly, it's ever likely to form a majority of government again. I'm always wary of writing the Conservative Party off, because many people have done that over the years, and somehow or other it always seems to rise sort of phoenix-like out of the ashes. And continues, but I do think there's a real possibility it could end up like the Liberal Party 100 years ago, largely an irrelevance.
So a party, in a way, is like a company. If it's down on its luck, it's got to have new ideas, it's got to regenerate, needs a new chief executive to come in, new finance guy, all that kind of stuff. At the end of it, what about a Tory reform? On the ballot. At the ballot, is that a possibility? Or, by the sound of it, it's not in. But both leaders say it's not in our interest. If we thought it was in our interest, we do it.
Well, not long after the last general election, probably September, October in 2024. I did say that what I would like to see is some form of coupon election, which happened in 1918, where where basically Kemi and Nigel do get together and say, this is our
Yeah.
platform, this is what we stand for, these are our candidates for us. I would like to see some form of uniting of the right going on like that. At the moment, all that people on the parties on the right do slag each other off and try to say they want to destroy each other. Well, that's not particularly very helpful at all, is it? Because if you look at the statistics, the country consistently votes for parties of the left more than it votes for parties of the right. The only reason Margaret Thatcher was successful in the 1980s was because she was the leader of the only party of the right, the Conservative Party. If it had been split like that, chances are the left would have got in. So the left are simply rubbing their hands in glee as they watch us try and tear each other apart. So we do need in some way to try and come together and work together at least a little bit to try and make sure that we defeat the left at the next general election, which of course could be next year.
Right. By the way, I totally buy that. I'm very glad that you make that point, because I was looking at the numbers the other day based upon the poll. Do you know that deep dive that they do, which shows which way the people were? There is no doubt who wins the next general election. It is a coalition of the Greens, Lib Dems, and Labour, right? And and so that would mean, and I think that would set in train that this country, for a very decent length of time, is then basically a quite seriously left-run country, which would drove out on my estate right now. I live on an estate of about 20 houses. All right. They are large houses. Yeah, good. I am absolutely delighted I live in a large house, okay? No ifs and buts about it. I like a large house. I've got a large house. I work bloody hard, and bollocks to the rest of you, right? So I just thought I'd just put that out there as a point of discussion. Right, on my estate, my next door neighbour has just legged it to Spain. Down the road, guy coming up to retirement, they're going to go and live in the Algarve. Round the corner, a guy I know is selling a tech company, right? He's not big time tech. He's gone to live in the Isle of Man, okay? For tax reasons. Me, even though they might be carried out on gas and air, right? I'd like to go and live in the States, right? My missus, plenty of brains, big family over here. She said, "Do you want to go to America? See you later." Well, we only got married last year. That'd be ridiculous, right? So I'm not doing that, okay? But I would go there tomorrow, right? All I'm seeing around me is people who, given the opportunity, are moving out of the country. These are wealth makers. They were hardworking people. They weren't all geniuses. They're not all Rupert Murdochs. They're not all this, that, and the other. You know, they're just people who want to hang on to their cash. And we're going to have a load of bloody lefties come in who say, right, your cash, thanks very much. We're going to give it to the skint and the dim, right? We're just going to do that. And you, by the way, are not doing anything about it. There is nobody who's actually speaking for me. I never hear about Kemi talking about making money and about people being successful. I never talk about her saying, I tell you what, that bloody plumber making 80, 90 grand a year, good luck to him or her, right? The brickie, fantastic, right? I never hear about anybody, nor do I hear from Nigel saying, do you know what? What I love is people going out there, having a go, failing, dusting themselves down, getting up. In fact, I've dusted myself so far down, I was thinking of making a special dust-proof effing jacket, right? I've bloody lost more money than I've made at the end of it. But at least I'm sitting there with my bloody hand out when I reach 65 and saying, oh, I'm not feeling very well, I've got to go into a care home. You can pay for it. The fact you haven't saved any money. 98% of the country, the other 2% are having to fund them. This is available as a podcast, this, Andrew. Anyway, look, the point I'm really making is I'd like people to talk about making money. It's not a theory. It's not a theory. It's not, you know, you're not a professor, you're not this, you're not that. You're just trying to bloody well make a few bob to keep the wolf from the bloody door and actually buy a big house. But anyway. What's wrong? Why is this an exceptional thing to say? Because I never hear politicians say it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if you go to America, you mentioned America there. You go to America and somebody starts up a business
Yeah,
and it fails, and then they start up another business again. I say, good on him. He failed
yeah,
that time, but he might succeed this next time. The idea of making money and being successful is all part of it. Over here, it seems to be a different mentality. In fact, if you are successful, it seems that all people want to do is to try and knock you down. And we know about the exodus of millionaires from this
yeah,
country. They're the people who actually pay for everything. But what is an even greater fear, and this may well be happening, is that those who are likely to be very successful in the future, those people who are likely to be millionaires and
yeah,
pay lots of
yeah.
tax, are just not even hanging around now because they see their opportunities in places like Dubai, as an example. And that's really worrying. And then going back to what we're talking about of this sort of left-wing coalition that could well come in, one thing I can guarantee, Kelvin, is that that left-wing coalition, and they'll have it in their manifestos, will be a change to the voting system.
Yeah,
And with that change to the voting system, they will
yeah,
guarantee that there will be a left-wing coalition in
y-
perpetuity.
yeah.
And that's where we're heading. The right really has to sort itself out and stop taking chunks out of each other, start being civil to each other, and start realizing that we may have our disagreements between Restore, Reform, and the Conservatives. Of course we do. And it's right to highlight those differences. You know, I'm a free marketeer, I believe in competition, but focus on who the real opponents are. And the real opponents are the Greens, the Lib Dems, and Labour. Focus on them.
Brilliant stuff, actually, Andrew. I'm sorry about my doctor told me not to get overexcited, but you managed to spark off that. That's very good to talk to you, Andrew. I certainly buy all this. I'm sure that you represent actually the views of this audience. I have absolutely no doubt. We need, in some odd way, if it's possible, to unite the right. It feels a long way away. But the other thing is, I want somebody to talk about making money. Nobody ever talks about making money. Anyway, Andrew, very good to see you. That's Andrew Allison. He's head of, actually, I think you're called Popcons or something, which is Popular Conservatives. I'm a member of the other one, which is Unpopular Conservatives, which is or unpopular generally. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Anyway, we've got it's all happening here. Most people are now contributing towards some kind of healthcare plan for me, because most people think that when I finally blow my stack and the blood pressure goes off the roof, that I may need some help. You're probably right there. Right, coming up now, Johnny Gold. I think I vaguely know Johnny, I think. And
Yeah, we know each other, Kelvin.
okay, and can I say that you've actually become more unattractive as the years have gone on, Johnny? I wanted to.
Yeah, what can you do? So eventually I'll get thrown out, but for now, I'm all yours, Kelvin.
Okay,
The-
fine, Johnny. Tell me about yourself. I know you. You've been in the broadcast business even longer than me. You've certainly been more successful than me, which is not difficult considering having my attitude towards life. The fact I'm on telly at all is an extraordinary aspect of the universality of social media. Look, I find it. I thought it a terrible moment yesterday. It gets praised that the Prime Minister contributed 200, big time Charlie is in this, contributed 250 million towards the protection of Jews. The truth about the matter is, how have we got to this in this country, right?
It's
Where
astounding enough money. Yeah, it's astounding.
how is it that a segment of our society is so under attack that even an anti-Semitic government like Labour says we've got to give you 250 million. And yet this is not a big thing. It's not a good thing. It's a shocking indictment of the country that the Jewish segment of our population are under such attack that they need extra policing, right? So I understand the why. I just, it's such a strange moment, isn't it? I mean, so for instance, if they announced it about Methodists or something like that, there would be a massive outcry, wouldn't there? What has happened to our nation and all this kind of stuff? Because it's happened to the Jews, who, to my certain knowledge, have been traduced for thousands of years across hundreds of different nations. Everybody says, oh, isn't that good of the Labour Party? I was shocked.
Do you know what? The practicalities of this, Kelvin, are that when I take my kids to school, there are 5 security positions. Okay, and one is around the corner, another one is in front of the school gates, and there are 2 people on the school gates, and then there are volunteer parents, me included, who go on the corner where the road is a little bit fast. And I take my security very, very seriously. All this will mean now is that we have a combination of real policemen and hobby bobbies on top of that to give us some kind of reassurance that
Right.
we won't get attacked. And the point of the matter is that it will happen. It's happened on Yom Kippur at Heaton Park, and it will happen again. It happened down the road at Golders Green. And this government is wasting their money on one of the most valuable assets that we have in our country. The Jewish people, very small population, just 300,000, but they want to contribute. And every time, every pound that we spend on securing our own Jewish buildings, synagogues and schools and community centers is one less pound that we invest in our time and in our energies and in our peoplehood, in a country that we love and we want to contribute to. So this is a tax which impoverishes the British people. Okay, it's not just the Jewish people. This is a
Yep.
problem for all of us. And I was really heartened by your conversation before with Mr. Allenson talking about why don't politicians make money? Common purpose. I'm writing a book at the moment about the city that I grew up in Birmingham, about the Maccabi Tel Aviv incident,
Yeah.
which was the end of my civilization. You know, I don't want to be too dramatic about that. You know, the world didn't come to an end. England hasn't closed down. But for me, as a Villa fan, as a Brummie, with going back 3 generations in Aston, you know, both my families had shops in Aston, right? And so it's the end of my civilization. What happened that rabble-rousing, terrible night of thugs and
Yeah. Yep.
bullies, and you know, just brought it to an. And I'm writing a book about the Birmingham I grew up in, the shocking decline that's happened over the last 20 years. And I'm going back even to the steam engine era, where Birmingham was one of the principal cities of the whole world. And, you know, you only have to look at Birmingham, Britain's second city, although Manchester's having a proper go at trying to usurp us, to see the terrible and shocking decline. On Mike's show, I have the extreme misfortune of going to Kilburn every day to drop my kids at school. It is an S-hole because no one will invest there. Make some money. Enjoy life. Don't keep people down. This government is about keeping people poor, and this is the manifestation of it. So these things together, the way the Jewish community is being persecuted, and that 250 million pounds, you know, I don't want it. I want them to get on with the people who are attacking us. It's a tax on Britain. It's not just an assault on the Jewish people. And our Jewish community goes there, right, has a handshake with Starmer, right? I wouldn't go. You know, I don't, you know, having access to these people is fine. And you give them a photo opportunity. Look, there's the head of the Jewish community. Oh, great. Thanks, Keir. Thanks for 250 million pounds looking after us. That's we don't want to live behind cages. You
Yeah.
know, we want to
Can
keep
I
getting on our
raise this?
lives.
All right, I raised this point with you, right? Not only that. So we think things bad are under, or you know, we say honestly, I have been around some of the cleverest and funniest people I meet in my lifetime are always Jewish business people. That they make me roll up, a very funny, quick-witted lot with a very closed-eyed view of life. So along comes a new leader of the Labour Party. So you think, oh well, this can't get any worse. The first thing he announces, in order to keep the Muslim vote on side, is we made mistakes over Gaza, right? Over our Gaza policy. Oh really? Well, what? And by the way, it's the Jewish people of our country that have paid the price for this alleged mistake. And what was the mistake going to be? Oh, we were too disparaging of the Gaza people rather than being friends. Honestly, all he was doing was encouraging more attacks on the Jewish segment of our society, of the nation. I was astonished. So remember, he's hardly said bugger all about anything, okay? But he crosses the road to make that statement. This guy is going to be a disaster for the Jewish people of this country, I think.
He is an absolute disaster. And while he was mayor of Manchester, I had a long conversation with a very high level Jewish community leader in Manchester who has got to know Burnham very well. And Burnham walks the walk and talks the talk when it comes to anti Semitism. But again, they are not joining the dots. They're not making a connection between that disgusting interview in The Guardian where he says we haven't done enough in Gaza,
Yeah.
you know, and I would say the Israelis haven't done enough in Gaza, actually, because unfortunately Hamas is still there and they are rearming and taking this opportunity in the lull to move and fight.
They oppress their people. They
Oh,
oppress their
terribly.
people, and they are Islamists who would never, ever, ever stop fighting. Okay. All that
So what Burnham's
Israel wants is to live in peace in an area surrounded by its enemies, and slowly its enemies are saying, "You're right, we do want to live in peace." But the Islamists from all over have gathered in Gaza, saying, "Actually, we're never living in peace. We're going to exterminate." And nobody seems to understand that this is a never-ending war. I can't.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the sovereign concepts of Israel is that the Jewish people, the Israeli population, and that's not just Jewish people, it's Christian Arabs, it's Muslim Arabs, it's people from the Orthodox and Coptic versions of Christianity, obviously the first Christians of the world, who obviously came from that place.
Yeah.
They should not be intimidated to live in the center of the country. So the idea is that it is very, very important that the populations go back to the north towards the Lebanese border, that go back to the south near the Gaza border, however dangerous that is. And that is why there is a buffer zone on both sides now. It's to stop Hezbollah tunneling and Hamas tunneling and thumping rockets over, because it's a belief among the 10 million people that live in Israel today that they should live the length and breadth of the country, and we do not have peace there. And unfortunately, now that Trump has decided to really go at the Iranians again in Hormuz, what's going to happen? The IRGC will set off these fat blokes down, Kilburn High Road, down Golders Green Road, and various other places, slashing local religious men who they can see are Jewish, because it's so easy for them to do. And the cops will be there, and Burnham will say, "Oh yeah, like anti-Semitism's terrible, isn't it? Like Paul McCartney. He's like a pound shop Paul McCartney. He's rubbish. He's useless." And I mean, he's not my prime minister, and he's very affable, and he tells a joke and all that, and he wears tight arse Everton kit, and they're rubbish. And I'm a Villa fan, and that's it. Anyway, so I can't bear him. And your previous guest saying, stop fighting right wing people. Let's all get together, because the only sense that I hear amongst any politician is Kemi Badenoch. I hear her talking for the whole country. There seems to be quite a lot of grievance on the hard left, and I call the Labour Party the hard left, and perhaps the further right. I'm not going to call them far right, but we talk about restore and we talk about reform. But we need to coalesce around making some money. I remember the 80s like you do. You were a great champion of the 80s. You're almost the embodiment of it. Trevor Horn was the man who invented the music 80s, but you were the one who invented the journalism of the 1980s. You're that character, Kelvin.
If we went any further down market, we'd probably meet the Greens coming up, I would think. No, actually, we hit a few lows out there. I'm just trying to find out who was the editor when it all happened, but I seem to be on holiday when most of those mistakes were made. So tell me, Johnny, are you still giving your broadcast views to the nation?
I am. I must say, as you probably know, I was on talk quite a lot over the last couple of years, but I've decided to take a break to really think about this. First of all, Mike's been a great supporter, a great pal, so I've come on over and do as much as I can with Mike and Charlotte. It's a pleasure to make my debut on your show today.
Okay, good.
But I've taken a bit of a break to write this book, because these contributions are good, and I'm grateful for them, but you have to at some point sit down and diagnose the problem and write it in a decent prose. And
Yeah.
so I've chucked out 45,000 words. I've
Right.
got a publishing deal, and in approximately the early part of 2027, this thing will go out in print. I'm writing my first ever book, age 59. I'm cock-a-hoop and I'm delighted to be accepted. It's not easy to write this kind of stuff in the publishing world, but I found someone who will publish it, and God willing, we'll have a book on our hands, and I hope it's a popular one.
Well, no, I hope it's a popular one, but isn't the truth about the matter about publishing is it is not a business anymore?
Yeah.
The number of people reading books, the number of people buying books has just gone bang in line really with the amount of time that is spent online, and it's a problem. Did you find it a challenge to find a publisher?
Do you know what? I'm a lucky bugger, aren't I? Because I sent in a synopsis to a good friend of mine, and he looked at it and said, "I need to see chapter one." I went, "Oh, blimey, better write it then." So I
Yeah.
wrote chapter one, and then 2 weeks later, his colleague contacted me and said words which I think I'm going to wake up from this dream. She said the words were beautiful. Come in and have a cup of posh coffee. So I did, and she really meant it. It wasn't a scam. And, I'm gonna get this book published.
Did she desire you in any way? Do you think, Johnny?
Oh,
I
I
can
think
I can
most.
tell you're a handsome man.
Yeah, I think most women find me irresistible, Kelvin. But on this occasion, I think it was strictly professional.
Well, that's a shame, isn't it? So
Shame.
next year, the book comes out. How many 100,000 words is it?
It's going to be 45,000. So it's
Oh,
going to be
right.
across 8 chapters. I'm still cultivating it, and it's gone into sort of my Birmingham background, which is it's a fascinating city because of all that it created. Lawn tennis was invented on one of those posh mansions in Edgbaston. The world's first tennis club was not Wimbledon. It's debated between whether it was the Edgbaston Archery Club, which still exists, and one in Leamington Spa.
I think
The league, the concept of league football, the idea
I,
of teams playing
I,
away
I
from
tell you what, we're having a problem with your line at the moment, Johnny. Can we try and get back to you? So,
yeah.
guys, can you try and get Johnny Gold back again? In the meantime, I thought I'd just go.
Quick look at the poll, Kelvin.
Yeah. So we had a rather bizarre poll put together, which indicates the intellectual depth of the production department. Basically, it was what we thought the score might be between France and Spain tonight. And whichever one you choose, I'm going to stick. I haven't decided whether it's going to be a tenner or £20, depending on what I believe. So, do you want to have a quick vote on that? So it's either 1-0, which is 8%, 1-1, which is 18%, 2-1 to France, 51%, and 1-2 the other way. That's quite interesting. That so almost everybody believes that. Or 70 odd percent really believe that it's for France to lose. I don't know whether that's true or not. To be honest with you, I really enjoyed this World Cup. Look, we have done better than I thought we'd do. To be honest with you, I thought we would be bunged out at the quarterfinal stage. The fact we got through to the semis, I think it's a triumph. The fact that Tuchel looked so bad-tempered all the time is another miracle, really, of being. I mean, he must have been bad temper for about 5 weeks running. That must be pretty tough going. I could do that. I could actually do about 5 years of it, I think. Right, coming up now, we'll go to the news and see whether we can get some of the tech gremlins out of the works. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. Edward the News Hughes here with your Tuesday Bulletin. Andy Burnham is on track to become the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Greater Manchester Mayor has secured overwhelming support from Labour MPs, positioning him to replace Keir Starmer without a full contest or general election. He's expected to enter Downing Street around July 20th. In a major development, counter-terrorism police have taken over the murder investigation into former Minister Anne Widdecombe. She was found dead at her Devon home with serious injuries last week. a man was arrested and later rearrested on terrorism-related suspicions after new evidence emerged. The probe is now treated as potentially politically motivated. Other headlines include UK moves to sanction Russian cyber networks and designate Iran's IRGC, alongside concerns over heatwave impacts. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
So Johnny Gold's microphone has imploded. So that's basically the energy he's bringing to what he's thinking about. But he's a good guy, and I quite like the fact that there's a lot. If you talk for a living, there's a lot of bullshit, right? Bullshit baffles brains kind of stuff. When you have to write something down and get people to really believe in what you're doing, that's different. So you come across people like Clarkson. So Clarkson can talk it, he can write it, and uniquely he can invest it. Can I tell you, the number of people who can do that are almost nil, because one of the issues about creativity is that creativity often locks out business acumen. It's just one of those things. It's difficult to do both at the same time. I've done some things well. I'm not a great business guy, and occasionally I get something right, and therefore I make enough money to keep going and get married again. So I just thought I'd throw that one in, just in case that the current holder of the office is watching.
Guess how long I've been married?
How long have you been married?
31 years.
Pooch, married 31 years. Me, married 31 minutes.
And yesterday, actually, Kelvin,
Yeah.
the white shirt I was wearing
Yeah.
was the white shirt that I got married in. I've
Right.
still got the same suit.
Okay, so why is it that you are the same size as
Exactly.
you were 30 odd years ago?
don't-
Do you eat?
No, I tell you what it is.
Do you eat much?
Yeah, I do. I eat loads.
Oh, right.
It's luck of the draw.
Okay,
Do you know, I like a drink.
yeah.
Um,
Let me write this down, that in UKLIVE, unless you like a drink, you can't get promoted. Okay, so this is a different way of running a company. Yeah, go on.
So I find it very easy to not overeat. I've never eaten more than 2 biscuits in a row. No, I haven't.
God.
I've never eaten more than 1 packet of crisps in a row
Right.
or a handful of peanuts, but I just don't want them yet. So that's just luck, because when it comes to
Do
drink,
you have dinner at night?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
When it comes to drink, though, I'll have 5, 6, 7 beers in a row. But certain people will say, well, I don't know what the problem is. I only have one. I've never had more than 1 beer in a row, yet I overeat. So I think we've all got an Achilles heel, but mine isn't food, because I eat what I want.
My
I'm very
brother's
lucky.
the same as you. He doesn't eat, but can drink 5 bottles of red wine in a row.
Oh, no, I eat. No,
Do
I
you?
can't drink red
So
wine.
why is it? It's just DNA.
DNA,
Yeah.
luck of the draw.
Right. Okay.
It is luck of the draw. And all of this, I mean, my dad died end of last year, age
right.
87.
Right. Okay. Had he been healthy?
All his life.
Right.
The doctors told him when he was 60 to stop smoking 40 a day and stop drinking 2 bottles of wine and half a bottle of scotch a day. He didn't. Yeah. He didn't. He told the doctor, he said, he went to the doctors, he was pretty ill. In fact, Scarlett had just been born.
Yeah.
And he went to the doctors, and doctor says, how much do you drink? And my dad's got no filter.
Yeah.
So he goes, not much. He goes, a couple of half pints. He worked in restaurants. A couple of half pints, maybe a bottle of wine in the afternoon, a bottle of wine in the evening, and then maybe, I don't know, half a bottle of scotch when I go home. And the doctor's like that. And he said, when was the last time you drank any water? My dad's, his eyebrows would go up and down. He'd say, 20 years ago. And literally, the doctor said, if you don't stop, you've got 6 months left.
Yeah.
Well, he lived another 27 years.
Yeah.
And it is luck of the draw. My mum never drank, never smoked, died at 58. It's luck of the draw.
I definitely think there's a DNA aspect to how. So it's like a throwing of the dice. I work with a rather large colleague. When at the sun, no, large sideways.
Okay.
Basically, if you wore a red suit, somebody would put an envelope
What's
in
that
its
you
mouth.
said about Adam Bolton? Monjaro.
Yeah,
resistant.
Monjaro reject.
Yeah.
Right. So a Monjaro reject. Right. So I don't know what he weighed. He was a huge man, a very large man. Right. You wear a 3-piece suit where he'd be bursting out of the, like a sausage. So he goes to see the doctor, and the doctor says to him, if you don't lose, you probably need to lose 6 or 7 stone in weight. And if you don't lose it, the truth about the matter is you're 62, one of us ain't going to be here next year. He goes back for his annual health check and the doctor had died.
No.
Right. So
well, not for the doctor.
No. So there we are. Nobody knows.
No,
so
you don't.
right. So Johnny Gold says, I'm writing 45,000 words about a very serious political moment in our lives.
Yep.
Maccabi, the Tel Aviv football team, effectively, the fans were banned because the Muslims, the strong Muslim control of Birmingham, said, right, they basically told the police, we're going to have a riot unless you stop it.
Yep.
Right. It was a disgraceful piece of caving in, the kind of thing which would have empowered that Muslim majority in Birmingham and would have made, I would have thought, every Jew in the Birmingham area saying to themselves, I'm getting the hell out of here. Right. I felt that was a terrible moment. So that book will be very interesting. How have you done in the book writing world?
Well, I had my first novel published. So came out of university, wanted to be a writer. I had a place to do a PhD.
In what? What were you planning to write
English
about?
literature.
Oh,
But then I thought I'll just end up in an ivory tower. I saw it and I thought I'll be there when I'm 60 and I'll never do anything. So I started work on building sites to make some money.
Did you?
And started writing my book. I got my first book published when I was 29. It did okay. It got reasonable reviews. I don't think it was that good. Then I carried on working on building sites, but I wanted to write my second book. So my wife and I worked out that it was cheaper to live in Australia and New Zealand for 6 months whilst I wrote the book than live in, we had the kids at the time, than live in the UK. So we went off to live in Australia.
Whereabouts?
We were in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and then we were in Auckland in New Zealand, but I lived with an Aboriginal tribe in the Tanami Desert. And
Where did the wife live then?
she was in Auckland.
She's no fool. We should get her on. Best decision I ever made. Not living. What on earth were you doing with the Aborigines?
Well, my book was about it was about a family story really, and the one brother shot another brother. He thought he'd killed him, and he fled the country to live in Australia, and he lived in the outback. So I needed research for that, and it was so funny when I arrived in a town called Tennant Creek, and I started. There were literally no whites, blacks only bars still. I mean, this is 20 odd years ago. And but I'd go into the Aboriginal bars and they were absolutely shocked. I'd got on really well with the white minor guys. Second I got into the Aboriginal bars, they wouldn't talk to me. I got into a couple of punch-ups with them. I ended up going out.
Well, why would you deliberately go into an Aboriginal bar?
Because I wanted their point of view.
Oh, I see. And they wanted you to get the hell out.
No, the Aboriginals liked me there. They were surprised. The white guys didn't like the fact I was associating with the Aborigines.
No.
I ended up living on a kind of a reservation with them. I boxed for them. I used to box. I boxed them in an intertribal boxing tournament.
So you boxed for the Aborigines against the white people?
No, against other tribes.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
And they gave me a skin name. I'm called Jackamara in this Warramungu tribe. But yeah, anyway, it's a hard world. It's a very, very hard world. You need to get yourself an agent. Agents are really picky. If you write a whole book, it's Kelvin Mackenzie life story. There's no point writing a whole book. They'll know if you write 3 chapters. Précis.
I totally right. So I did my own book.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And when I read it, I thought it was bloody dull, and I never bothered to have it published.
What was the best bit?
I don't know. I think the best bit. Right. When you write a book, you have to be honest.
Yeah.
You have to be totally honest.
And you wrote it. No ghostwriting.
I had a bit of ghostwriting, but the only chapters that were worthwhile actually were the ones I wrote, in my sense, because at least I felt they were stories. But then when I read it, I found it A, uninteresting, right? This is just, right? And B, it wasn't honest. That was the main point. I wasn't prepared to disclose myself, my frailties, my inabilities, my deceits. Do you see what I mean?
I always find that fascinating about all of us. We're walking around, I'm walking around with a whole load of things in my head that I'd never tell anyone.
Yeah.
We've all got that.
Yeah.
You've got that.
Yeah.
I think if you are able to do that, you're very brave putting it down, but I think there's an ulterior motive. You think that's the reason the book will sell. I think it's very difficult for you to say that one thing, that two thing, that if you think about late at night, it embarrasses you, doesn't it?
Well, not only does it embarrasses you, but it will embarrass. Look, I don't care what people. In a sense, I don't care what people think about me. I'm way beyond all that. But I don't want to damage anybody else in my life, right?
Yeah,
And
quite like Kay Burley.
Yeah, Kay Burley, very good gag there. She told me 35 years ago, she asked me what the similarity was between a lobster thermidor and a blowjob. And the answer was, you don't get either of them at home, right? Kay Burley joke. Thank you, Kay. Carry on. And yes, there has to be a complete honesty, I think, about it all. And if you're not prepared to do that, or it's a biography of any kind, then forget it. It's never going to work. And at the same time, why do you want to be totally honest, right? So there's a commercial directive towards it. You be vanilla, you definitely won't sell. And by the way, it won't be the truth about you either. And if you are totally candid, then honestly, there may only be 3 people in the world who currently talk to you. That'll turn out to be 1.
What about a biography? If someone had written an unauthorized biography, that could have been quite interesting.
It might have been. I'm not sure, really. I'm not sure. I didn't really think that it would work, actually. No matter. Look, if you write one about Boris, I don't know whether you read the. I read the Boris at number 10. Not by him. I tried reading his.
No.
His was a total load of tosh, and the reason it was written in such a vanilla way was that Boris did think he will be coming back.
Yeah.
Right. His book was based on the fact, okay, a few years' time, I'll be back. He will not be back. Boris was a total ongoing disaster for the Tory party.
No,
he comes in with an 80+ majority, ruins his idleness, his lack of attention to detail, his lack of attention to seriousness, left us high and bloody dry. And he didn't ever believe in bloody Brexit. It was a simple vehicle for him in order to get to the boss. Anyway, carry on with your book.
I was just going to say, though, why... I ask myself this question quite a bit, and I've never really asked anyone. Why do people buy into Boris? Because I just thought he was a clown. I thought he was playing an act, the tousled hair.
Yeah.
He went out running during, I think it was probably during the whole COVID thing, and he was really trying to make this impression of being, I don't care, I'm a bit crazy, but I'm fantastic. He had a t-shirt on, shorts, and his dress shoes. I mean, everyone's got some trainers. You're doing that to make a point. Why did people buy into Boris, do you think? Was it because...
Well, I tell you what, there was something about him. I remember once being at some kind of Spectator do, it may have been. Yeah, I think it probably was. So Cameron comes in, right, and he's won this election, and everybody, handsome, Eton kind of guy. Everyone goes, whoa, and really gives him a nice big cheer. Boris was Mayor of London.
Which was a great feat, by the way. He did very well getting that.
He did. He comes in half an hour later. Ray! It was like, I'd never seen anything quite like this, right? There was something about him which, in an odd way, captured the optimism of the moment, okay? I buy it. So he becomes the leader. Honestly, we were sold. If there was a Trade Descriptions Act...
Sold a pup, weren't we?
Yeah. We had been sold a total bag of lies about him. And he was a disaster. And if you read the book, I can't remember by the guy, he was the former, he writes fantastic stuff. He was a head teacher. And
we have him on my show. Yeah, he's very good.
He comes on. When he talks about politics, I tell you what, we'll get him on tomorrow. Get him on tomorrow.
Yeah.
When he writes the description of Boris and what a nightmare it was behind the scenes, it was an absolute disgrace. The trouble is the books don't sell very well.
No.
There is no money in them. Publishers are bang up against it. They're making much more money out of their library than they are out of anything. If you turn up with a book today, all right, you might be lucky. You might be a total genius, in which case somebody recognizes it as fine. But by and large, I mean, your story, actually, of the idea of a guy. Actually, if there's any film producer watching right now.
No, I told you, I turned it into a Netflix thing with AI, and I still intend to do it. It's a family story. What happened though, when one brother shoots the other brother over a girl, he buggers off to Australia, and lives his life there. And it's kind of an allegory for how, you know, a couple hundred years ago we used to send people out. That was your penance. That was your, you know. So, but the guy's not dead. He's in a coma, and the sister has to look after him all her life. And it's about how women hold families together in that way. So it was a reasonable story.
No, I'm much more interested. I'm not interested in your book. I'm much interested in your story. The idea. No, don't buy that book, by the way. It sounds like a load of tosh.
No, it didn't get published.
But his story, but the picture's story there, that he would go and fight for the Aborigines against other Aborigines as the white guy with an Aborigine name.
Yeah, Jacamara.
Right. I'm not saying it's a movie, but it's certainly an uninteresting.
So we were out about 40 miles from Tennant Creek, and what they do is fascinating. In order to stop any kind of inbreeding within a certain tribe, they have these tournament things, and they have a meeting where tribes come from all around. And I can't remember it, but there's a naming convention whereby you can only marry certain people with certain names.
Oh, right. To
stop the inbreeding.
Well, perhaps they should go to Bradford with that idea.
And so what they do is they had I went out hunting a kangaroo with the guys, and they had woomera sticks, and it was fascinating.
When you say, what is a woomera?
A woomera is that you have a bit of wood like that with a groove in it and a spear, and you throw that. They killed this kangaroo. We took it back, dug a big pit, put fire in there, chucked the kangaroo in, turned it over, burnt all the fur off, and then they just gutted it. Apparently the old Aboriginal ladies like the guts, and then they put it in a fire and put it like oven. They put earth on top. Then the tournament began, and there were the big old guts.
I think Domino's would be interested in that idea.
Home delivery kangaroo. I like it. But no, it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating.
This is
big fire going.
White guy.
Yeah.
Effectively through friendship, employed by the Aborigines to fight other Aborigines. So when the white guy climbs into the ring, what were they? 3-minute rounds or something?
No, it wasn't. It was just until one guy gets. It was a bit sumo. Either you go down or get punched out of the circle.
No. Yeah, I see what you mean. So you're in the circle.
Yeah.
Right. Boom, and bang, you get banged out, then it's over.
Yeah, that's it.
And otherwise, you just sit there slugging the hell out of each other.
Luckily, I'd been in New Zealand with Joe and the kids, and I'd been down at New Zealand Boxing Club, so I'd been training with the Commonwealth light middleweight champion, who was beating the shit out of me, but I was very, very, very fit, so I could kind of survive. But it was just fascinating. During this whole thing, they were offering me women to marry. I mean, it was just, why don't you marry this woman? Why don't you marry that woman? I sent a picture back to my wife of me with a black eye with a couple of Aboriginal ladies there next to me. Kelvin, it's a fascinating experience. And
did you find them attractive, the Aboriginal ladies?
Do you know, my wife has made a really good point.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. And that's not being pejorative.
Yeah.
You look at integration in Australia, you don't get much integration between Aboriginals and...
You don't.
But in New Zealand you do, because the Maori are very attractive. And so she said to me, have you noticed how there's a lot of... You'd see mixed couples walking up and down in Auckland, but you did not see that in Australia so much. And I found the Australians, Aussies, in general, to be bloody racist. You know, most of them never met an Aborigine. They
use the word Paki about Pakistanis, don't they? In the way that we don't.
Yeah,
Pooch,
you've got to guess. I've got to go.
Yeah, but Pooch, actually, that was a lot more interesting than some of the stuff we've had on today. So perhaps what we should do, we should make you do the Kelvin Mackenzie show, right? And you bring on you just tell your stories, and probably the audience will go off the dial. Right now, I think, are we going to break for the news? Okay, well, that'd be fine if I knew who the next guest was. I know it's a lady from Paris, isn't it? It's
Elizabeth.
Oh, right. Now, I don't know Anne Elizabeth Moutet, but what I do know is that she's based in Paris, and she's a political broadcaster. So she's one up on me since I'm an amateur broadcaster. Hi there. How are you?
Bonjour.
Oh, bonjour. Oh, very good to see you. How do you pronounce your last? Is it Moutet? Moutet. Right. So actually, the relationship between the UK and France is actually going through a rather good moment at the moment. There's not a lot of shouting going on, and there's not a lot There's not a lot of. I see that the numbers are vaguely down, which is probably the reason why everybody's getting on. They're vaguely down between the illegal route between Calais and Dover, which seems to carry as many people as the Eurostar currently. That seems to have gone down a little bit. What is the atmosphere politically like? I noticed that most of your politicians now are wearing those things on their ankles, indicating that they have some criminal aspect to their lives. That lady is doing rather well. She seems to be miles ahead in the polls.
She is miles ahead in the polls, and her deputy in the movement, who thought he would be the one running for president, and he doesn't have an ankle bracelet, also was doing very well in the poll. And part of it is because people have had enough of 9.5 years of Emmanuel Macron. And part of it is the general feeling that politicians in general, and that's absolutely similar to Britain, are not doing what really should be happening in sort of, they're doing all sorts of things that they never got a mandate for, most of which has got to do with immigration.
Yeah. So this is a very good point, isn't it? That in fact, in some ways, the UK economy and the French economy and the general feeling of a social breakdown are very, very similar. This is also true of Germany, and that essentially Western Europe turns out to be in an uncomfortable position. It has plenty of democracy and no wealth, whereas actually, I wonder whether people would prefer it the other way.
I don't think so. I don't think they would formulate it like that. But first of all, there's political fatigue, and Macron has political fatigue because that's the way of all leaders. And it was interesting because about 5 minutes ago, I was looking at the end of the Bastille Day parade, and I saw Macron and Keir Starmer next to one another. He'd invited 32 heads of states and Volodymyr Zelensky especially for his last parade. Next year it will be another president who might be Marine Le Pen or who might be somebody else. But there's also a feeling that many of the choices that are made in the name of citizens have got nothing to do with what the citizens themselves would like,
Correct.
which is usual things: less crime, more growth, possibly more jobs, and certainly less inflation. It's not rocket science. It's probably rocket science to get it right, but it's not rocket science finding out what they want, because they say it regularly, and then you get told that you're not sophisticated enough, and therefore there are more things that matter. Macron, after sort of dilly-dallying a bit at the beginning of the Ukraine war, has now sided firmly with the coalition of the willing for Ukraine, which is, it's not a main issue in France, but at least he's been consistent. I think what's being reproached him is mostly that he is not consistent, that he will say that he will do something and then he will say he will do something else. They're not necessarily related. But other than that, it's the blues of Western Europe, and to some extent it's unique to us all. If we go to Central or Eastern Europe, they're much more decided on what they want, and what they want is a combination of prosperity and no Russians in their countries, which is fairly simple. And we don't have yet the feeling for danger in France that the rest of Europe is getting, because they've had it before or they see it coming. And that also creates a situation in which everybody has got different solutions for the way to solve our problems. It is not unlike Britain. And then the last thing is social cohesion, and there's less of this than we would like.
So if you looked at, okay, these are the dying embers of the Macron era. First of all, it is hugely unusual to have 10 years of anything, unless you're a dictator, frankly, in Western democracies. I mean, it's an astonishing achievement, really. When he goes, does the whole centrist idea just simply implode, and that was the end of it? A bizarre moment, clever man, driven man, right? Does that disappear out of France altogether and get mopped up in traditional voting techniques?
It's a really interesting question that you're asking, and that's nailed it. Macron decided that he would be neither left nor right, but somewhere at the center, and sort of he cherry-picked people in his first government from both parties. It's skewed left because every possible organization skews left at one time or another.
Correct.
Apart from that, it's more a question that it did not work so well, because what I think will happen next year, it's very possible that Marine Le Pen will be beaten as well by another centrist who was Macron's first prime minister, who looks like a serious guy, who was a Chiracien, who was a follower of Alain Juppé, the prime minister under Chirac,
Right.
who's got a bit of experience, but I don't think he will have a majority in the House. I don't think Marine Le Pen would have a majority in the House. I don't think socialist, who could very well be François Hollande, the previous president, will have a majority in the House. So the instability will last again and again, and it's only the constitution of the Fifth Republic that's keeping everything together.
But I mean, it is a fascinating moment that France has had 10 years of a leader. I mean, a unique moment, and yet the French actually, if they don't like something, the voter, they just riot. For instance, over here, when they stuck up the pension age, everyone went, "Oh yeah, you stuck up the pension age. Oh well, that's good." In France, the slight mention of that, and basically the prime minister falls. You know, they are a very volatile electorate in France, and that's why I find it astonishing that you can get a decade of one leader. What is it about that at the one hand they're setting fire to hayricks, but on the other hand they're saying, "I tell you what, you didn't do much of a job, but we'll vote for you anyway."
Well, one is function of the other, because you're right, precisely because we've got a very stable system that was designed by General de Gaulle in 1958, the Constitution of the Fifth Republic, which means that it's very difficult to get rid of the president. And if the president has guts, it's also very difficult to get rid of the prime minister he appointed, because it's not like Britain, where the prime minister is automatically the leader of the party that's in power, and the king is a figurehead. But on the other hand, we've had the stability before. We had Mitterrand for an astonishing 14 years.
Right.
We've had Jacques Chirac for 12 years, because he reduced the term from 7 years to 5 years, but he had it twice. So it's we don't see this as stability. Sometimes we see it as stagnation, and sometimes we see it as something to rebel against. But if you talked about pensions, and it's a really interesting case, is essentially the attitude of French voters in general is the attitude of Arthur Scargill in 1984. And it is, you are not going to get what you want because my voters or my members do not want it. Because there's a feeling in France that the only way you get something is going to be through the mediation of the state. We don't like rich people. We're a country that has a tradition of both Catholicism and Marxism, which means that we've got two different ways of despising money and liking having it ourselves, but not liking the rich. And so the result is that you've got those sort of bouts of anger, and in a system that is seen sometimes, or actually is sometimes stagnant, which is why we've had all the revolutions in the past. We have a pay-as-you-go system for pensions, which is unsustainable. Everybody knows that it is unsustainable. Nobody wants to be the first one to blink, because they will not get thanks for this. And they're not being unreasonable. In France, if you're the one who says, "Oh, I might have got this wrong," it's not the English way of saying, "I might have got this wrong," and then you talk about it again and somebody smiles for a bit. The French say, "Oh, somebody is quite willing to take the rap," and they all pile on that person. They don't want it. You're the one who says, "Okay, my job might go," and poof, you're fired. So that's also it. There's rationality in it. We're not crazy. We're crazy in other things, but not in this.
Okay, that's great. Well, look, I actually we could have actually talked for longer if I knew a bit more strong questions to ask you. But the show is coming to an end. But thank you very much indeed. I love your punch. I didn't realise that you were.
I used to love the sun under you. Really, it was fun.
Okay, that's very kind of you to say so. Thank you very much indeed. Rupert Murdoch doesn't share that view, by the way. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, well, that's the show. But we've got coming up right now, Paul Cox. Now, I've got a question for Paul Cox. Now, listen to this, and then send me some text afterwards. Right, Paul, I didn't know you were a comedian, okay, first of all. So that was a huge, you didn't make me laugh, but I thought we were talking about football, right? So I've had an idea. and I put it to Pooch. Pooch says, good idea. I want to start a 80s night of telling jokes. We're going to tell the kind of jokes or of the genre of jokes of the 80s, okay? And possibly the 70s and possibly of the 60s. And we'll advertise it like that. And the PR will be the jokes. I say there will be a queue round the block because you go to comedy nights, there is nothing effing funny at a comedy night, right? You are going there so you can tell your mates, I went to a comedy night. Nobody tells off-color gags. Nobody tells gags that are going to offend anybody. And actually, the whole point of this night will be an offensive night of comedy, right? And you're either coming in there going to have a good bloody laugh or not. My question is, am I right? Is this a commercial opportunity around the country, or is it something you'd like to be involved in?
Look, who am I to say Kelvin Mackenzie's wrong? I'm not Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I think that's an absolute winner. There is something almost
that's
similar.
That's it. All over. Well done, Paul. Go on. No, carry on. Sorry. Carry on. Why
No. So there is something very similar to that that's set up by Andrew Doyle, which is called Comedy Unleashed.
Oh yes, I've just heard about it.
Yeah, so Comedy Unleashed is well worth a visit. It runs out of the Backyard Club in Bethnal Green in London, and there's one in Leeds and one in Manchester, and it's essentially comedians with the freedom to tell jokes that might offend. Can you imagine? So, but yes, absolutely. If the thing about comedy is, it always needs to be original. People want it to be authentic. So there isn't really a market for people to repeat something that was said in the past.
Yeah.
However, which is why someone like Jim Davidson, for instance, has managed to compile a bunch of, unfortunately, rather older comedians now to redo their sets from that time.
Yeah.
But there is definitely a market. For particularly on the UKLIVE online followership, to produce a comedy night of that.
Okay, so I say to Pooch. Pooch says, look, Pooch is a promoter guy, i.e., he takes his slice off the top, and the rest of you get the crumbs off the table. That's how promoting works, right? And actually, so he says to me, we'll do one night. We're going to do it down in Esher, okay? 150. I say there will be a queue round the block and we could do 3 nights without even thinking about it. Once you put the gags out as your PR, the queue, they'll be fighting to get in. And if we price it correctly, look, there's no particular money to be had in it. It's almost political. Anyway, Paul, let's talk about the football. That's what you're the genius at, as well as being a very funny guy. But well, I'll take the second bit as a possibility. Anyway, on your so how do you see tonight going? First of all,
our big game tonight, France, Spain. This is 2 of the biggest teams in the world at the moment. Look, I really can't call it. I can call it based on who I hate the most, Kelvin.
Who do you hate the most?
I think I hate France the most in terms of the footballing nation. I'm not being xenophobic here. Yeah. Although, if I was going to be xenophobic, this is the channel to do it on. I have the freedom to do so. But
actually, that's a great idea.
Who likes France?
That's a great idea, Paul. We start the xenophobic channel. Anybody who hates anybody who hates anybody, right? It doesn't have just to be a nation. It can be individuals. It can be your neighbour. It could be the bloke in the bakery shop. You never liked him anyway, and you can't stand his almond croissants and he overcharges. If you have a view of hatred and you're xenophobic, come on.
Well, yeah, exactly. What unites people as much as hate or xenophobia? I mean, obviously on the show tonight, it's the middle of the morning, isn't it? Yeah. We've had which nationality does Pooch fancy the most? Obviously, I think that can become a show on its own. We can't. You know, I'm look forward to that. I can't wait for Pooch to talk about his sexual contest.
Do you know? I don't want to be unkind, but the idea that Pooch is knocking 7 bells out of Aborigines in the middle of the desert, if that isn't a Netflix show, I don't know what is, to be honest. Anyway, look, Paul, I look forward to your show coming up. It's going to be these are a great couple of days coming up, and we've got next Sunday as well. The World Cup, to my mind, has been a fabulous success. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think it really has. I think we've not seen a lot of trouble. We've seen some fantastic games. It seems to have united people. And let's face it, people, particularly the sort of people who wouldn't like to watch us, hate the fact that football unites. And they're almost trying to co-opt it as some sort of left-wing ideology. Football is communism. That's a lot of nonsense, obviously. So, yeah, it's great to see.
Okay, do you know what? Anyway, as long as you promise to appear on our 80s night of comedy and watch your career go down the pan, that would be absolutely fantastic. It'd probably make it. I won't be there, but Pooch will be staging a boxing match between him and the Aborigines. That's something I must see. Paul, very good luck with your show. I very much look forward to it. Cheers.
Hello, everyone. Edward the News Hughes here with your Tuesday Bulletin. Andy Burnham is on track to become the UK's next Prime Minister. The former Greater Manchester Mayor has secured overwhelming support from Labour MPs, positioning him to replace Keir Starmer without a full contest or